Good evening. The May 25th meeting of the Human Services Committee will now come to order. Will you, clerk, please call the roll?
Ms. Andrews? Here. Mr. Daniele? Here. Ms. Cayley? Here. Mr. Lightfoot? Present. Dr. Quattro? Here. Mr. Rocco? Here. And Chairwoman Draw.
Here. Madam Clerk, I know that there's some people signed up to speak this evening.
Oh, yes. We have 10 speakers for the public forum. You will be called up one at a time. You have 2 minutes to address the committee, and then just exit through the back of the chambers. First person is John Curran.
Good afternoon. My name is John Curran. I'm the chairperson for the Southwest Rochester Riverfront Steering Committee. We're concerned about the health of our neighborhood, and we're also concerned about costs. It is costly to have too great of a fee for vendors to sell food at our farmers market. It is costly in terms of the farmer not making money at a neighborhood area that needs it. It is costly in terms of the loss of our time planning for this year's farmers market. And it is costly in the long run if we should have a loss of our market because there are not enough persons to support it. We strongly recommend that the $150 fee be the maximum for vendor fees, not the $450 fee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Chris Hartman.
Good evening. My name's Chris Hartman. I'm founder of the South Wedge Farmers Market, helped start the West Side Farmers Market, and have worked a lot with various community-based farmers markets around Monroe County. Farmers markets, as you likely know, are a significantly important activity as far as individual health, providing access to healthy food for individuals, building the social activity in neighborhoods, supporting economic development within communities, and ultimately creating a more viable situation for all of Monroe County. In addition to that, they are, of course, a significant area as far as profitable marketplaces for local farmers. I've worked a lot with different Monroe County individuals to support our local agriculture, and farmers markets are undoubtedly a great opportunity for enhanced economic development in that realm. The ability to sell prepared foods at farmers market, is perhaps insignificant as it seems, is a really important variable as far as the viability and vitality of these farmers markets. Through a lot of customer surveys and a lot of conferences and work with other market managers, this is consistently an issue. Some counties, Monroe County in particular, have prohibitively high fees for local businesses to participate and sell food at farmers markets. And I and many other people strongly encourage the good work that you're doing discussing this matter and moving forward to really make it affordable for local businesses to participate and sell prepared foods at farmers markets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Robert Boyd.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Boyd. I'm the Executive Director of the South Wedge Planning Committee, which runs the South Wedge Farmers Market. I'm also on the faculty of the School of Business at SUNY Geneseo. And I'd like to comment briefly on the economic impact of the ability to serve prepared food at the many farmers markets in Monroe County. Under the current fee structure, it costs approximately $1,200 for a small business owner to participate in a 20-week farmers market. They would need to sell $18,000 worth of product to make it economically viable for them, which is at $800 to $900 a night is impractical. There are a number of proposals to make the fee work for small business. Based on approximately 40 vendors over 20 markets and a maximum fee of $100, the county would receive $6,000 in incremental revenue from fees alone. Sales for these small business for the season could range between $300,000 and $400,000, which would generate between $24,000 and $32,000 in additional sales tax revenue. There would be a limited amount of additional work, as many of the health inspectors are already familiar with most of the people who would have licenses. and they would only do periodic reviews and inspections. There should be no incremental increase. I know that 30 to 38,000 is not a real big number when it comes to some of the things that happen in a big organization in government. To micro business, that's huge. So I encourage you to support the development of micro business and make it easy to do business in Monroe County and not strangle off small businesses with high fees and process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Liesel Schwartz.
Hi, my name is Liesel Schwartz, and I'm a student at the University of Rochester. I worked with the Westside Farmers Market last summer as an intern, and I've seen the great benefit that the market has on the community, not only that it surrounds, but also the Rochester, or the U of R community that I live in. The market is a great resource for students, for local food, and also is a great way to introduce the students to the community, not only the immediate community of the neighborhood, but also the Rochester community, giving students a great experience and understanding of Rochester. The lack of food vendors that has resulted in a very drastic decrease in attendance at the market, and to some extent, this market survival rests on our ability to host prepared food options. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eleanor Coleman.
My name is Eleanor Coleman. I'm the Director of Youth and Family Services at the Southwest Area Neighborhood Association. We're regular participants in the Westside Farmers Market. We have a greenhouse across the street from us, and I apologize for my attire, but I just came out of it. Grow Monroe. So what we do is teach kids how to grow vegetables, and then they sell them at the Westside Farmers Market. They're long days for them because they start with us at around 2:30 and they stay at the market till it closes. We're also trying to make a community shift, a cultural shift in how people build community together. There's a lot of pieces that come to play when we have these markets. We have entertainment. We teach about the environment. There's a lot of pieces that are holistic in trying to make sure that whole communities are invited to these venues. We participated in the corner store study. We know that there are, at the time the study was done, there were 3 markets that had fresh fruits and vegetables. So we know the importance of having this market. And I know that one of the stores that was included in that is closed now. So it's really important to us that the market be viable and that folks continue to want to attend it. And we do see the prepared foods as being really important at the market. One of our vendors who makes sauce, a local entrepreneur, sells her sauce at Wegmans, wanted to be able to cook and show folks how to eat healthy. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity for kids to see a local African-American business owner running a business. So we hope that you consider the $150 fee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Gardner-Smith.
I'm the manager of the South Wedge and Brighton Farmers Markets. The Brighton Farmers Market opens this Sunday, May 30th, in the Brighton High School parking lot. It runs from 9 to 1. It's a lively, growing market with a very large, supportive customer base. The following Thursday, June 3rd, is opening day for the South Wedge Farmers Market. It's a wonderful, unique market that reflects the vibrant urban neighborhood that it's located in. It's held at the corner of Alexander and South Clinton from 4 to 8 on Thursday afternoons. I'd like to invite you to visit both of our markets. They're both fun, lively community gathering places. Customers come from all over Monroe County, so they'd be great places for you to meet your constituents. As members of the Health and Human Services Committee, I'm sure that you'd be happy to see all the wonderful, healthy local foods that are available. Farmers are going to be bringing the first local strawberries to the markets. I would love to have a strawberry festival at these markets and offer the customers strawberry shortcake. I can't afford to do that because the fee structure is so prohibitively expensive. At the South Wedge, we can't offer you a sandwich, excuse me, to enjoy with your family and friends under the trees that shade our beautiful market. I appreciate the efforts of this committee to reform the fee structure. I'd encourage you to lead the effort to reform a situation that needs to be fixed. Please impose a fee of $150 a year that would really allow us to improve our markets, strengthen our markets. Please, I'd love to see you at our markets. Please come and join us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Jackie Farrell.
So I'm working hard not to trip tonight. We are here once again to encourage you to adopt the amendment that will provide food vendors at farmers markets a simpler and more affordable way to obtain temporary food service establishment permits. Providing prepared food at markets is an excellent community builder. People come out of their homes, buy dinner, shop at the market, enjoy time with their neighbors. The food they enjoy is nutritionally sound and therefore encourages good eating habits. It has been proven that more people come to the market when prepared foods are offered. And because of that, the market grows and thrives, supporting farmers and small business people. We all know that the offerings from the vendors at farmers markets are fresh and healthy, and that, as a community, all of Monroe County has been striving to achieve balanced nutrition in our eating habits and is supporting programs that fight obesity. The food at farmers markets absolutely supports and enhances that work. As an added benefit to the county, this amendment will bring in more revenue. Although the amendment proposes to reduce the fees, the markets have not been paying these fees because they are cost prohibitive. Markets have therefore not been able to offer prepared dinners to their shoppers. Once this amendment goes into effect, markets will be able to bring in prepared food vendors, and the county will receive more dollars from permits. We ask that the fees be no more than $150 for high risk for the entire season. As I have said before, this amendment is a win-win situation for everyone, with crucial benefits for the entire community, including a diet of healthy food. Neighbors get to know each other, shoppers support the local vendors, and vendors continue to invest in the neighborhood. It is how we build community and how we encourage our community to thrive and grow. I encourage you to adopt this proposal with speed as the market season is beginning. And you don't want to keep seeing me every month.
Thank you.
Michael Warren Thomas.
Thank you very much. Michael Warren Thomas. I'm here representing Jim Farr today, as well as myself. I work with Jim in the Department of Recreation, the City of Rochester. He oversees the public market for the city and has really been the force that has revived the public market in the last 15 or 20 years. I ask you to imagine, I expect most of you have been to the public market, imagine the public market with no food available. How long do people stay if they can't have lunch, if they can't have breakfast? Think of all the different venues at the public market that have food. We need to make this possible in smaller locations. Our market and the other farmers markets in the area don't have 40,000 people on a Saturday. It's a different scale there. But we do have the same food vendors every week. And so the health department does not need to reinvent the wheel of every week looking at different vendors, evaluating them. They get to know them just like they do other venues, and they can do this in a cost savings manner. We need to look at $150 as the maximum. If you cut the $1,200 fee in half, it's not going to help us. We're not going to have more food vendors. We have 300-400 people that come to a market on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday. We need lower fees than just a portion of that $1,200. And the start of the market season has begun. Right now is a crucial time for us to have additional food vendors there because there's not as much produce. It's still early in the season. We need the prepared foods there to attract people in this early season. I'm excited that you can vote on this tonight and move it on to the county legislature. That still puts it off a ways before we can make this happen. But if it doesn't happen now, it's not going to help us this year. And it is crucial to the survival of some of these farmers markets. It's not a given that they're all going to be around next year when things finally happen. So if you can move this forward tonight, we'd really appreciate it. From where I live, it's in the 19th Ward. It's about a 30-minute walk to Tops. There are no markets in walking distance between the U of R, which no longer has the Wegmans there. We need these kinds of markets in our neighborhoods, and there are ways to make this happen, and an attitude of let's make this happen. Please vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Hartstein.
My name is Mary Hartstein, and I work for Leadership Rochester, and I'm also an avid volunteer at the Westside Farmers Market. Our market and many others in the county are run entirely by volunteers. We choose to give an extraordinary amount of our time to create a social, healthy, and safe environment in our neighborhoods where people can shop and eat together. The presence of prepared foods often doubles our number of market goers, and this number can make or break any market. We need an affordable option for local restaurants to serve food at these markets, or many and we will not survive. Affordable means different things to different people. Anything above $150 for the season would be cost prohibitive for local restaurants to survive and for the market to survive. Please approve this legislation and make our county healthier and our community brighter. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. Is there anyone present who has not signed up to speak that would like to speak to the committee tonight? Oh, please come forward. Can you just tell us your name, too? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jackie Woodward, and I work for NeighborWorks Rochester. And in my job, I work in the Healthy Blocks program, and we're all about building community. And although this is outside of my job, it's totally about building community. People come together, and they talk to their neighbors, and they find out what's going on. And yeah, they pick up their vegetables, and they pick up dinner, and it's a great place for them to hang out and just see what's going on. And so it's such a valuable neighborhood asset to continue to build this and continue to support it. And that includes having food at the market, prepared food at the market. So it would be very beneficial for us and for the farmers and for the restaurant vendors to have a maximum of $150 fee for the permit per market season. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. You have before you the April 27th, 2010 minutes. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. And next, we have a presentation. We have Paul Johnson here, the Associate Planner of the Planning and Development Committee, will give a brief overview of the 2011 through 2016 Capital Improvement Program as it pertains to the Human Services Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everyone should have a copy of the County Executive's proposed Capital Improvement Program. This comes to the legislature having been reviewed and recommended by the Monroe County Planning Board. During their review, they held 3 public information meetings on this program to get public input and comment. The other thing I would point out is that the county legislature, as part of their review and approval, is required to hold one public hearing on this capital program. Hopefully you will set that hearing at your June meeting and conduct the hearing and adopt this program in July. Two quick kind of overview items.
Sorry.
Sorry, Paul.
I'm not finished. Two quick kind of summary items about our program. We set two goals. We wanted to reduce overall spending by 20% over our 6-year period from last year's adopted program, and we achieved that. We also wanted to reduce the spikes or giant leaps in funding from year to year in the program, and we've also achieved that goal by setting kind of a stable $65 million level of funding from all sources over a 6-year period. The one program area that would be of interest to Human Services Committee would be the Monroe Community Hospital, which you would find on page 20. There are 4 general project categories. These have appeared in previous capital improvement programs and involve exterior site and utility improvements, infrastructure improvements, interior improvements, and equipment furnishings and resident care. I would note that as part of our cost reduction strategy, we did achieve a 25% reduction in funding for these program categories at the hospital over last year's program. And that, Madam Chair, is a very quick overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you to the administration, wondered if you could discuss the status of the Monroe County Pediatrics and Visitation Center project. Are we on course for that as presented a few months ago?
Through the chair, I'm Jason Kennedy with Department of Environmental Services, Engineering and Facilities Group, and I can tell you that the project is currently on schedule and on budget. It's slated to be completed later this year.
Great, thank you. And so that means there are no significant change orders that have come in for that project?
Through the chair, no significant change orders.
Okay, could I just ask you to define significant for me, please?
Through the chair, not outside the boundaries of what we would expect on a construction project of that size, cost, and magnitude, if you will.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And just on a general note, I just want to thank the administration for including or continuing to include the Culver Road project. That's in my district, so we're really excited to see that underway this year. Thank you.
Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Through you, Madam Chairman, on page 19 of the CIP last year included roof improvement scheduled for 2011. This project has been removed from the current proposed CIP. I'm just wondering, what is the status of this project? Has it been completed? If not, will it be? Through you, Madam Chairman. It's a good question.
Through the chair, it's my understanding that the roof project mentioned previously has been incorporated into 2 of the other projects listed in the CIP, including exterior site and utility improvements and general infrastructure improvements.
Through you, Madam Chairman, to the administration, where would we find that in this proposed CIP, sir?
Through the chair, they're listed on page 21 of the program.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Paul. Next item on the agenda is a new business, Madam Clerk.
Referral 10-142.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, second by Legislator Rocco. Any? Second by Legislator Lightfoot. Legislator Quattro.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And let me start out by saying that this whole process has been, I think, very satisfying as a legislator. There's been, I think, a wonderful level of bipartisan communication and cooperation and great dialogue with the administration, particularly in this instance with the Department of Health. Let me also say this is an issue that's particularly near and dear to my heart. I don't just incorporate healthy eating habits into my own life, but I encourage them in my practice as well to patients. There's no secret, it's no secret that obesity is an issue that affects people across communities in Monroe County. And it's an issue that I talk about almost with all of my patients. So it's an issue that's very important to me. And let me say this as well. My father was born on Ridge Street almost 81 years ago, and that's right near the public market. And my earliest memories with my father have been at the public market. We visit it regularly. Eating fresh, healthy stuff from the public market has always been part of my life. I miss the public market when I don't have the opportunity to get there. So I appreciate the value of markets, large and small, in our community that offer fresh vegetables and fresh prepared food to people in the community, particularly in communities that might not have easy access to fresh vegetables or fresh prepared food that's prepared in a healthy way as opposed to fast food. I do have some questions with regards to some of the issues that Legislator Lightfoot and I have discussed along with Legislator Adair, who can't be here tonight because he's with his daughter. But through you, Madam Chair, to the administration, I would like to have a brief explanation of the permit and inspection process that goes along with these market inspections as it currently exists, just so I can have an understanding of it.
Through the chair. I'm sorry. I'm Frank Marabella from the Monroe County Health Department. The permit application process starts with the submission of the application form. We do collect a lot of information regarding the operation, of course the dates that the operation is going to take place. We also collect information as to the types of food products that are being served, where the food is being prepared, because we want to make sure that any food that's not prepared on site is going to be coming from a licensed facility or an approved facility. We do an operational review in many cases with the operators to determine what processes they're going to do with the food that they are preparing to make sure that they have all of the safety issues covered. We go over all of our guidelines with them as well to make sure that they're going to have all of the necessary equipment and the necessary hot or cold holding equipment that they're going to need depending on the types of foods that they're serving. One of the other things we definitely have to review with an applicant is whether or not they have a certified food worker that's going to be present, if that's going to be required for the types of food that they're serving. So we have to verify the person is certified and has the proper certification. We do also have to check for that they meet the workers' compensation and disability insurance requirements. If they're not required to have that, they would have to provide an exemption form to us so that we can waive that requirement for them providing the certificate. Then, after we process the application, we do track a lot of the information in our database that we have. We include all the basic information about the operator. We also include a lot of information about the products that they're serving, the dates of operation, whether or not they've provided the insurance and the certificates. So we do track a lot of the data in our system. Of course, then we process payments. When the payment is received, we do have to enter that information in also. We also process waivers for charitable organizations that the fee is waived either 50% or fully, depending on their operating budgets. But we do accept applications for waivers and review those and process those if applicable. Then the next step would be to assign a risk also. I know we've talked a lot about risks for facilities, and there's 3 categories really of risks that we have. We have low risk, medium risk, and high risk. So someone will review the application, and depending on the foods and the processes that they're going to use, we will designate the risk for that facility. Then the day of the event, we will send an inspector out in most cases to perform an inspection, particularly if it's a large festival or an event where there are several operators. We will definitely send an inspector out to do an inspection. They will, again, review that they have all the equipment. They'll take temperatures of the food, make sure everything's in the safe ranges. If there are any problems, they will certainly address any of those issues that they encounter with the operators. In some instances, we do have to make revisits to verify that corrective actions have been made, particularly if there's very serious food handling issues that have been identified. So we would do the inspection, issue the permit to them at that time too, so that they would be able to post that in their stand. And we would also respond to any complaints that we receive concerning any temporary food operators as well.
Thank you very much. And just a couple of points of clarification through you, Madam Chair. You mentioned low, medium, and high risk identifications. Could you give me an example of each, please?
Sure. Through the chair. The risk classification is really based on the types of food processes that are involved with preparing the food. A high risk obviously has the most involvement as far as processing and different steps or stages that a food has to go through, from preparation to service. An example of that would be, of a high risk restaurant would be a party house or a full-service restaurant that prepares soups and stews and gravies or large portions of meat, where you may have to cook, cool the item down, reheat it for service, possibly just hold something for service, for example, hot holding or cold holding for extended periods of time. So there's a lot more that would have to be done to the food than just cook and serve. A medium risk type facility would be the cook and serve type establishment, where you're just cooking and immediately serving to the public. For example, hot dogs, hamburgers, prepared sandwiches. Those would all fall into the medium risk category. A low risk type facility would be very, very minimal food handling is involved. It could be prepackaged items, could be low-risk foods like serving popcorn or ice cream or just beverages. Those would all fall under a low-risk category. Very minimal food handling is required, so that they're given a low-risk designation.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chairman, would you presume that the majority of the vendors at these markets would be medium to low risk or medium risk?
Yeah, I would, through the chair, I would definitely say most would be medium to low risk.
Okay, thank you very much. And through you, Madam Chairman, when you were discussing the actual inspection, you said in most cases you would inspect. Could you explain that? I mean, there are some cases you wouldn't inspect, or is your inspection strategy hit or miss, or help me to understand what the strategy is for inspection?
Well, we do have quite a few of temporary food service establishments that we receive applications for annually. We inspect a good number of them, but we unfortunately are not able to get to all of the temporary food establishments that we have issued permits to. So basically what we do is we will prioritize based on a number of factors. Risk certainly is a priority. Past history of past operations can come into play, whether we would, issue a permit without doing an actual inspection. The length of the duration of the event, the attendance factor is also an issue as well. So we do prioritize our applications, and we make an attempt to inspect as many as we possibly can, but due to the sheer numbers, we aren't able to inspect all of them. So we do prioritize, and it is based on risk and past history, and and the amounts of foods that are being served there.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chairman, if you said that the permit is granted upon inspection, if a vendor is not inspected at a particular market, when would they receive their permit to display?
We could either mail it to them ahead of time, or they can pick it up at the time of application too.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned that because of staffing, or because of the number of people or vendors that you might be at any particular time inspecting, that you might not be able to, because of staffing, get to these vendors. If there was a large increase in the number of inspections you had to do, how would that affect your operation?
Well, yes, certainly. If the number dramatically increased, that certainly would potentially increase the number of establishments that we might not be able to get to. That certainly could be a possibility.
Thank you. In the proposed referral that's before us tonight, we're looking at roughly a 2/3 decrease in the number or the dollar amount. It looks like most of the people are going to be in medium to low risk. Most of the vendors are in medium to low risk. But help me to understand a couple of issues here. We reduced it by 2/3. How did we arrive at the 2/3 reduction? How do we get from 220 for 56 consecutive days to 75, for instance?
Well, basically, in our effort to be able to accommodate a lower fee, we certainly wanted to come up with a fair proposal that would result in a significant decrease in cost saving. So looking at the overall cost that that it would be to pay the full fee for each of those permits. We certainly wanted to offer a significant decrease of over 50%. So we felt that a 65 to 68% reduction would be a significant savings, albeit it may not cover our expense to produce that number of permits. We are definitely in support of offering a cost reduction, because we feel that this is an important effort.
So through you, Madam Chairman, just as a point of clarification, at those levels, we don't anticipate it's going to actually cover the county's cost to do the inspections, permitting process, et cetera.
It potentially could not, depending again on the numbers of inspections that it would prompt, also depending on the types of foods that that may be involved in any new operators that are coming into play. It certainly could not cover the expense possibly.
So through you, Madam Chairman, it's at some level or at some point, depending on the risk that we're evaluating and the number of vendors we're evaluating, the county could end up subsidizing at least a portion of the inspections.
Yes, possibly, through the chair.
Through you, Madam Chairman, do you expect an increase in the number of inspections you're going to do? Permits that you're going to get, inspections?
Through the chair, yes, I would anticipate an increased interest in participating in events for sure.
And just a couple of more questions with regards to the issue at hand. there's been some discussion as well that was brought to the fore between the legislators who were discussing this, as well as the folks from the markets themselves who had some dialogue with the State Department of Health with regards to there not being really a classification of permit that fits. And there was some discussion as well with the DOH at the state level that they were working on the issue. It certainly is an issue that's presented itself in other counties. There isn't any sort of standard way it's being handled by other counties, regardless of the fact that the statute seems clear to me. But the state DOH has recognized there's an issue, and they seem to be working on it. Do you have any insight for me on whether you know that's happening or when it could happen? No, it's not really a fair question.
Through the chair, no, I'm not really aware of any efforts that are being made to change processes at this point.
Thank you. And one last question was that we discussed at length particularly considering the fact that other counties do this differently. Other counties don't consider the permit as consecutive days, but rather non-consecutive days. Certainly we have latitude as a legislature to set the fee, certainly with input from you folks. But could we consider this 14 days non-consecutive?
Through the chair, Senior Deputy County Attorney Meredith Smith. Like you said, the regulation is quite clear when it talks about a single event or celebration of not more than 14 consecutive days duration. So the law department advice to the county is 14 consecutive days means 14 consecutive days. It's not appropriate for me or our law department to comment upon how other counties interpret the law, but certainly in our law department here, we advise our clients as to what the law is and how it should be followed.
And this just brings to mind one other question. There was a discussion about reclassification of these markets. I know that there is a classification for portable hot dog cart type things, and there's catering classifications. Could these markets be, or vendors at these markets be reclassified in some way so that we could accommodate them differently? I know that other counties do that as well.
Through the chair, each of those different categories that you mentioned are defined differently in the codes that govern them. There's actually a separate code for what's called mobile food service establishments, and that is specifically related to two types of mobile food service, and that would be push carts or mobile self-contained units that are basically in vehicles. We do have permits for that type of an operation. They are classified as mobile food service, and they're given an annual permit. They can vend at any location that allows them to vend. They obviously would have to get permissions from the area where they are going to be set up. But from our standpoint, we issue them an annual permit, and they are allowed to to set up anywhere that they're allowed to. It would not pertain to a temporary food service operator, because that's a completely separate classification of vendor, and there is a separate code that addresses temporary food service. So a mobile permit would not apply to a temporary food service operator. Also, you mentioned caterers. A caterer is also a different classification of food vendor, and a caterer is a person that provides food for a private function, for a specific group of people. So catering would also not apply to temporary food service operations at public events.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that there'll be some more questions tonight, but I want to thank everyone that has participated in this process. Your answers tonight, through you, Madam Chair, were certainly comprehensive, and I know that you folks did an awesome job in putting this together, and I appreciate the effort that you've done. I'd like to thank the people from the markets as well. not just from a healthcare provider standpoint and from a community standpoint, but for their passion over this issue. It seems to me personally that regardless where we end up with fees on this, that a portion of the solution here is going to have to be addressed by the state DOH, and I'll submit a memorializing resolution to our state representatives to address that issue specifically. But I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank Legislator Lightfoot and the folks from the markets for the work that we've done on this issue. And those are all the questions I have for right now.
Thank you. Legislator Lightfoot?
Yeah. Through you, Madam Chairman, to the administration, are you aware, or is it true that the New York State Department of Health, which has been referred to several times by Majority Leader Quattro, acts as a temporary food service establishment for other counties or districts that don't have an office that handles that? So New York State Department of Health manages these temporary food service establishments. My question to you, Madam Chairman, to the administration, is it true that the state bundles appropriate number of one-day permits depending on the length of the market season that allows vendors to submit only one application and obtain one bundle permit for a one-time fee of $30, that the New York State Department of Health does this for 21 other counties? Do you, Madam Chairman, to the administration, are you aware of that?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are aware that the New York State Department of Health is constrained by state regulation to only charge $30 for temporary food service establishment permits. There's a state regulation which requires them to charge $30 and no more. We're certainly aware that anecdotally that the State Department of Health would very much like to increase that fee, but the regulation has been in effect since 1989, and they have not been successful in amending those regulations to increase the fees.
Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up on the question then, if they're capped at a $30 charge, is it our understanding of that $30 charge is that does cover these permits for the entire season? Is that correct?
Through the chair, I do believe that that is the case.
Okay, thank you. And that, again, our understanding is that's what happens then in 21 counties around the state, is that the similar type of food service vendors that we're discussing here to now charge $450 for a season only pay the $30 for the entire season. And I would guess it just, do you have any idea where the $450 for Monroe County falls in line with what other counties charge, aside from those 21 that only charge the $30?
Through the chair, we do have information on fees that other counties charge. There's a very, very wide range of fees that are applied, across the whole state. A lot of them are, in line with what we currently are charging. There are counties that certainly charge a lot more than what we're charging, but then there are other counties that have, lower fees as well. As each, county or, government is establishing their fee schedule, what we've seen is, there are certain services that people assign, maybe assign higher fees for throughout, in their county. So it's really hard to compare when we look at all of the fees and all the services that people are charging fees for. You definitely see a wide gamut of fees, through the schedules of the different counties. But we are aware of fees that other counties are charging.
Through the chair, and just glancing at the data that we have, which I don't believe is all the counties in the state, but on top of the 21 that only charge $30, the vast majority of the counties that I'm looking at here charge between $30 and $160 for a similar type of permit. For the entire season, where in our level proposed, while a reduction is great, proposing it to be reduced down to 450, it still seems like that's far out of line with what the other counties charge. And I guess my question would be, back to what New York State Department of Health does for those 21 counties, if the state can issue that sort of permit, it's $30 for the entire season, and that's coming from the State Department of Health, couldn't the county also follow suit and issue a permit along that same lines for $30 or $60 or $150 or whatever the number we wanted to establish it at? But if the State Department of Health does it for 21 counties, why can't Monroe County do it for our county?
Through the chair, again, we can't comment on the legality of what other counties and what other departments are doing. The state sanitary code is pretty clear. Again, it says you can issue a temporary food service permit for not more than 14 consecutive days, and that's our advice to the county as the law department. The fees are what can be revised legally, and that's, I believe, what this referral is addressing.
Then, through the chair, then, would you believe then, from a legal perspective, that what the state is doing itself is violating its own law?
I can't comment on that.
But it does, I mean, if you follow my argument here, it seems that if the state is the one that has this regulation and the state is allowing itself to issue the permit in 21 counties around the state for $30, that our county ought to be able to follow suit as well.
Well, that would probably be a good, through the chair, excuse me, that would be a good question to ask the state. Again, our interpretation of this regulation is it says what it says, and our county needs to follow the law.
Through the chair, would it be possible to request that we check with the state to see if this way of issuing the permit would follow their guidelines and regulations, so that we have their opinion?
Why don't we'll take that under advisement and we'll get back to you.
Thank you. Just one other question then. In terms of reducing this rate, because you raised during the presentation some concerns about the lower fee structure now may not cover the full cost of, I think, the labor and the work that's involved in inspecting all the different sites. How much was budgeted in the 2010 budget in anticipation for these fees to be collected?
Through you, Madam Chair, we certainly did do a projection of the number of units that would be under permit, multiplied by the fee, and projected a certain dollar amount for temporary food service establishments. But we don't have that information here with us tonight, and we can make it available to you.
That would be very helpful, because I'm just noticing this referral indicates that no net county support is required, and it doesn't indicate that there's going to be any effect on the county budget, even though there's a reduction proposed in the fee, which is great, because I fully support the reduction, but I would be interested to know how much revenue you anticipate losing as a result of reducing the permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any legislative Quattro?
I think that I had the same question as well with regards to the budget impact statement, and the answer that I was given was that the number of permits that they anticipate doing will offset the loss that they anticipate or see in the reduction from last year's budget, so that we anticipate that it'll be neutral. We're hoping that it will, be more, but it will at least be neutral.
Legislator Cayley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to the administration, so if I understand correctly, if we took the temporary, the 2-week permits out of this, if we were looking at the seasonal and the annual, do the fees that are received cover the budget needed for the inspections? Or perhaps I could rephrase that. Do they cover the cost of the inspections at the same rate per inspection? If you get what I mean, if it didn't cover the cost of the labor needed for the inspections, does it cover it to the same amount?
Through the chair, could you clarify the question, please?
Yes, I'm sorry, I sort of changed it mid-phrase. I think what I'm getting at, it's been brought up that, and while I agree the inspections are important, that I'm not sure that everything is happening consistently. And what I'm trying to ask is, if the fees that are collected for the longer season and the yearly permits, do they cover the cost of the inspections that are scheduled to be done for these vendors? We talked about having a lower rate being paid for the 2-week extending the temporary vendors, and that would be a cost, that you'd have to inspect more. What I'm trying to get at is, do the permits that are currently collected now cover the cost of adequate inspection schedules?
Through the chair, the answer, I guess, would be yes to that, yes.
Thank you. And through the chair, then could you give me an idea on the annual vendors? We could use the food carts on downtown, how often they're inspected during the year?
Through the chair, we would inspect them at least annually, but if we would make more frequent inspections if the inspections were unsatisfactory, or if we received complaints, we would make more visits.
Thank you. And then to you again, through the chair, could you give me the percentage of, probably can't, but what I'm looking for is the percentage of complaints or poor inspection results of the temporary vendors that attend festivals?
Through the chair, I don't have an answer for that right now. I can try to get that answer to you, though.
Thank you. I think in a like simpler version of it is, does it stand to reason that with each festival inspection there are issues?
Through the chair, yes, we do identify a lot of issues, during temporary events. We definitely cite public health hazards. We definitely have to discard food in many occasions. Again, I couldn't give you the percentage at this point of how many pass the initial inspection or how many have public health hazards. But, I can say from, my experience, and I actually was an inspector in that program myself, so I do recall that, there certainly are a lot of issues that are identified during the temporary food inspections.
Thank you. That's it for now.
Legislator Lightfoot.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I also want to thank administration for answering the questions thus far. Thank the farmer market advocates who really are concerned, and I think we all share the same concern for this. That's why I'm grateful that President Jeff Adair, as well as Majority Leader Quattro, made themselves available to talk about this issue in further detail. However, I really had to look at this from a perspective, as my colleague Dan Quattro said earlier about his business, his practice, and I had to look at my business and how I conduct business as a micro business. And I really had to look at the difference between, like, myself and maybe other colleagues that we have, Mr. Daniele, who would probably be a high risk, I would imagine, because I don't hire, anybody. I don't pay benefits to employees. I don't make the revenue that I'm sure you're so blessed to have. And I really had to look at the cost of this. And, yes, $1,000 is a lot of money. To decrease it by a third is an excellent step forward. However, the one thing that came to my mind is a few years ago when the city of Rochester raised the city business permits. And I'll never forget this. They raised them to $100. And people from Park Avenue complained. about $100 raise. And I said to myself, wow, you know, here's the most influential place, if you will. You know, I work in that district as a fireman, so I'm very familiar with the community. And it really amazed me and they refused, literally, to pay the fee. Well, many conversations went on with the city, and the fee was changed. And currently now, the fee is renewable. What $20 is free if you renew within a certain period. Now, I know cooking food and a business permit is totally different. The health of our community, not spreading disease, all those kind of things I'm very familiar with. You know, I'm one of the ones that are on the calls when the people are calling in sick because they got food poisoning. So, you know, I see the effects of it and everything. However, I still can't get past how $100 is a major increase in someone's budget who's a micro business, such as myself. This is even more than that, an increase. Constantly it's been mentioned, referring to state statute, but then we find our own state actually providing it at a more reduced cost than what we're providing. So I don't buy that. I don't buy the state statute piece that you know, this administration is trying to hold on to. I feel that this is a step in the right direction. However, I think there's much more we can do to help these micro businesses, and to cite the fact that the reason we might not want to increase the amount of applications is how I read that, because we don't have enough bodies to inspect, is ludicrous to me, because that's like, okay, we're not going to want to increase micro or small businesses in our community because we don't have enough staff to increase or grow Monroe. That's ridiculous. We should hire more staff or do what we have to do in order to grow Monroe if we really want to grow Monroe. So in efforts to come to an amicable solution, I'm prepared to propose a compromise between the current proposal, which I am co-sponsor of, and New York State Department of Health's current practice. Under the current proposal, a temporary food service establishment wishing to operate at a farmer's market that runs 6 months in Monroe County would be required to apply 3 to 4 times for the same permit, costing upwards of $450 for the season based on the current proposal. The current practice of the New York State Department of Health, which manages temporary food service establishments, permits throughout 9 district offices for 21 counties throughout New York State, which has been confirmed by this county administration, is to bundle the appropriate number of one-day permits depending on the length of the market season. This allows the vendor to submit only one application and obtain one bundle of permits for a one-time fee of $30. This bundle of permits is both time-saving, cost-effective for both the vendor and the Department of Health. The Department of Health always reserves the right and has a responsibility to inspect temporary food service establishments throughout the season, as they do with all food service establishments such as restaurants, as Mr. Daniele has, and schools and colleges. This will go unchanged. At this time, I am prepared to offer the following amendment. This amendment would allow the vendor to apply one time to the Monroe County Department of Public Health for a temporary food service establishment permit, and if approved, would receive a bundle of 22 one-day permits at a one-time total cost of $75 for low-risk establishments and $150 for medium high-risk establishments. If I have a second, I'd like to present this amendment.
Any discussion? Legislator Quattro.
I just have one question through you, Madam Chair, to the Law Department. Does this amendment comply with New York State regulation or law with regards to the sanitary code, in your opinion?
Through the chair, from looking at this, it says $75 for 22 non-consecutive days, and the state sanitary code does not allow the issuance of temporary food service establishment permits for anything in excess of, or it requires up to 14 consecutive days. So I would say, no, this does not appear to be in compliance with the state sanitary code.
I think that the amendment should be ruled out of order.
Call for a vote. Out of order.
Madam Chair, I mean, we just had a conversation about this, but it does seem like this proposal is in lines with what the state itself does and the 21 counties it oversees, it's hard for me to imagine that it would be out of order or illegal. Yes.
So we call a vote then on the...
A roll call vote?
Yeah. Those who support the ruling of the chair vote yes. Those who don't vote no.
Absolutely. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Andrews? Mr. Daniele? Ms. Cayley? Mr. Lightfoot? Mr. Quattro? Mr. Rocco? Chairwoman Draw?
Yes.
4-3.
4-3.
Made a ruling that we appealed in that case? I mean, just going forward, we don't need to go through the whole process again, but didn't you said you thought it was out of order, but did you agree?
I did
Madam Chair?
agree. I did agree. I let you speak. Yes, sorry, Legislator Andrews, yes.
Madam Chairman?
Legislator Lightfoot, regarding this amendment, you want to
No,
speak?
we just voted on that.
Yeah. You,
Okay,
right.
I'm sorry.
Yes, so. Okay, so okay. Madam Clerk, would you please call the next resolution? I'm sorry, we're on the original amendment. I'm sorry.
To you, Madam Chairman.
Yes, Legislator Lightfoot.
Again, trying to come to a consensus here that I believe is fair. I want to present another amendment to you, Madam Chairman. Be it moved that referral number 10-0142 be amended as follows. The fee schedule is proposed as follows. Farmer market low risk, $75 for 22 non-consecutive days. Let it be farmers market medium high risk, $150 for 22 non-consecutive days. The specific legislation actually required to amend Resolution 229 of 2009 to reduce the fee charge to temporary food establishments that operate as seasonal farmer markets as follows. At this time, I'm prepared to offer this amendment. This amendment would simply change the current proposal time frame from 56 consecutive days to 182 consecutive days by increasing the bundle from the 4 to 13, 14-day permits. The cost will stay the same, $75 for low risk, $150 for medium high risk, but would cover the entire farmers market season. Through you, Madam Chairman, with a second, I'd like to present this amendment.
Moved by Legislator Lightfoot. Second. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Legislator Cayley. Any discussion? Legislator Andrews.
Madam Chair, I would speak in favor of this amendment in part because one of the issues that's come up this evening is the county's concern regarding whether or not changing it to non-consecutive days, changing the permit to non-consecutive days would be legal. So this amendment would avoid that problem as it continues with the consecutive days concept, but just lowers the rates. So we would hope to have support from this entire committee to make the rate that the permit, to make the cost of the permit more in line with the cost across New York State. Thank you.
Legislator Quattro.
I would love to be able to do this. I would love to be able to agree to cut the rate even more than the 2/3 reduction that we're currently proposing in the original referral. But considering the fact that we're already subsidizing at some level the cost of inspections at both low and medium risk, I don't think it's responsible to do that. I also think that, as I said before, a portion of the solution here is to encourage the State Department of Health to address the issue. It sounds like they are with regards to a specific classification for farmers markets, and I don't think that we should be taking the pressure off the state, for instance, in doing that. So I don't think taxpayers should be subsidizing the cost of permits any more than they do currently. And I also don't think it's fair to people who apply for these permits outside of farmers markets or for carts that need to be inspected annually, or for restaurants or for caterers. I think that a 2/3 reduction in the fee is fair considering the cost to the county, so I'm going to be voting no against this amendment. I'm going to be voting no on this amendment.
Legislator Daniele.
Madam Chairman, I will be voting no on this as well, but I would like to explain my vote. I certainly appreciate the enthusiasm of our representatives from the public markets around town, and being somebody in the food service industry and a small business person, not that big, still a small business person, I certainly am sensitive to the fact that costs associated with doing business can be overwhelming at times. However, they are costs of doing business, and as I have costs of doing business and Legislator Lightfoot has costs of doing business, the taxpayers of this county, there is a cost of doing business. And, you know, there was reference to, I guess, the $30 club pack that the state issues on a regular basis in 21 counties. If that's true, I would also assert that in those counties, there's probably lackluster inspections being taken place at these events and potentially compromising the public health. Being somebody in the food service business myself, I do understand the sensitivity of handling raw chicken, raw seafood, high and medium risk items, and I sleep better at night knowing that these inspectors are out there doing their job, and my concern is that lowering the fee any farther than we've already done, which I am certainly an advocate of lowering the fees to the original amount that we've spoken of this evening, but I do believe lowering it any further would compromise the ability of our Department of Health to inspect all these vendors, all these events, without incurring additional costs that would fall on the back of the taxpayers. So that's why I'll be voting no on this amendment.
Any Legislator Lightfoot?
Amendment. I find that that's very interesting, through you, Madam Chairman, that Mr. Daniele could speak to what other counties might be doing improperly, or the state improperly, but can't speak to whether or not it's really illegal from a legal perspective from the administration, from the legal department, but can say kind of boldly that they're probably doing things wrong. Well, we can't say that they're probably doing things wrong because we don't know, because you don't know what they're doing because you can't answer the questions. So I think that's kind of way out there to try to insinuate that these other counties are preparing food improperly. I think that's a wrong statement to be trying to make.
Legislator Cayley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just urge passage of this amendment. I would take exception with the comment of the annual inspections when it's been stated that if you have a cart downtown, you would get inspected perhaps one time a year. I would think that it would be reasonable that if someone were applying for the reduced rate of the temporary certification permits, that you would get inspected one time per season. That inspection would happen one time per season, one time at that particular market. Not suggesting that inspections are not done often enough, but I think that we cannot equate a one-time yearly inspection of a cart on the corner as better than once during a summer season in a farmer's market. I would also add that a number of the farmer's markets, there are people that work at the markets that actually hold food handlers permits, which means they're very accustomed to what is required. I myself have done festivals and still do festivals, and we have a food handler's permit to run that festival as well, and do regular scheduled visits to our food vendors. I think that we need to concentrate on trying to enable businesses, and these are not just businesses within the city, these are also markets outside the city limits, to grow in a vigorous way and responsibly, and I think that lowering the fees at this point offers the opportunity to do so, inspecting as on the same schedule that they would inspect on a seasonal or annual basis, and perhaps advocating for markets to have a food handler's permit certified person on site during working hours. I believe that this is workable, and to make it as affordable as possible in the beginning. Thank you.
Legislator Andrews.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to a couple of comments that were made by Legislator Quattro and Legislator Daniele. regarding the taxpayer subsidizing this referral, and I just object to that characterization. I believe that it was stated that this referral would be cost neutral, in part because the expectation that the lower cost will result in an increased number of permits. So using that concept, it's not any more of a taxpayer subsidy than it could, I guess, possibly be at this point in time. And so I would also continue to use that logic by thinking, especially after listening to the testimony this evening, that if the cost of the permit were lowered even more to something that were financially manageable for this type of business, that we would see an even higher number of businesses wanting this permit. And again, it would continue to be cost neutral to the county. And then additionally, just to point out whether or not it's fair or unfair to other permanent restaurant establishments, I only have right in front of me the fees for 2009 from the county, but it appears to me that the fee for a regular restaurant, depending on the seating, varies from $170 a year to $370 a year. So this permit, as proposed, not the amendment, but as the original motion tonight, reduces the permit to $450 a year. So that's still far above what a restaurant in the community is going to pay, which arguably I would hope and expect has a much higher level of revenue coming in annually due to the fact that it's open year-round and it's a permanent type of establishment. So I think the argument that it's not fair doesn't really pass the test. Thank you.
I'd like to call for a vote on the amendment.
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. Daniele?
No.
Ms. Cayley?
Yes.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Quattro?
No.
Mr. Rocco?
No.
Chairwoman Draw?
No.
3-4.
Can we go back to the original amendment? I'm sorry. Legislator
One more.
Lightfoot?
Still trying to get compromise here, bipartisan. To you, Madam Chairman, I'd like to present the following amendment. Be it moved that referral number 10-0142 be amended as follows. The fee schedule proposed as follows. Farmer market low risk be changed from $75 to $30 for 56 consecutive days, 4 14-day permits. Farmer market medium high risk, $150 be changed to $40 for 56 consecutive days. The specific legislation as required to amend Resolution 229 of 2009 to reduce the fees charged to temporary food service establishments that operate as seasonal farmer markets as follows. At this time, I'm prepared to offer this follow amendment. This amendment would simply change the fee structure of the current proposal. The low risk fee would change from $75 to $30. The medium high risk would change from $150 to $40. Nothing would change regarding the time frame, which we heard is in the state statute. Okay, we're not messing with that. Vendors would still need to apply for obtain permits every 56 days for four 14-day permits. This will allow the vendors to pay no more than $120 for 168 consecutive days. If second, I'd like to present this amendment.
Second. Moved by Legislator Lightfoot, second by
Thank you.
Cayley. Any discussion on the amendment? Legislator Quattro?
I'm not going to support this amendment for the same reasons I stated before. I think that the $75 fee represents a realistic cost for the health department, and I believe that at that number, their estimates with regards to the number of inspections they expect to do or permits they expect to do makes it cost neutral. So I will be voting no against this amendment.
I'd like to call a vote on Legislator Cayley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to urge support of this amendment, and I would like to speak to one other point that was brought forth. If we wait for the state to address this in what I feel is an equitable solution, it won't happen. Thank you.
Call a vote on the amendment. Roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Andrews? Mr. Daniele? Ms. Cayley?
Yes.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Yes.
Dr. Quattro?
No.
Mr. Rocco?
No.
Chairwoman Draw?
No.
3-4.
We go back to the original referral. Have to call it roll call vote on the referral.
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Mr. Daniele?
Yes.
Ms. Cayley?
Yes.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Yes.
Dr. Quattro?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Chairwoman Draw?
Yes. All those, next item of business, Madam Clerk, sorry.
That's okay. Referral 10-143, Young Citizens.
Moved by Legislator Rocco, second by Legislator Quattro. Was it Quattro? Daniele, sorry. I'm sorry. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, or seeing none? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Next item, opposed, no? Item carries. Next item of business.
Referral 10-152.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, second by Legislator Daniele. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 10-161.
Moved by Legislator Rocco, second by Legislator Daniele. Any discussion on this? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the administration. In looking through this referral, it appears that Monroe County is going to enter into an agreement with 6 other counties to establish a not-for-profit corporation, which is going to administer the operation of this program regarding mental illness and chemical dependency. Can someone just explain how this is going to work and what sort of not-for-profit corporation we're creating? Please.
Through the chair, I'm Dr. Kathy Plum from the Monroe County Office of Mental Health. And the purpose of this agreement is to formalize a relationship that's existed since 2001 with these counties cooperating in providing leadership to the state regarding behavioral health services. The not-for-profit would give the counties a legal identity to identify us as a group.
Through the chair, thank you. What's the name of the not-for-profit going to be, or can you talk a little bit about the process or the timeline, or what this is actually going to look like when it's up and running, please?
Through the chair, we're proposing the name of the new corporation be New York Care Coordination Program, and the timeline, the papers, we would need to, first of all, work out more details in terms of the relationships, but the paperwork could be filed after all the counties have gone through this same process that we're going through.
And through the chair, what's the cost of establishing this?
Through the chair, I'm not sure what the cost is. The project gets money from New York State Office of Mental Health, and we have their endorsement to become a formal not-for-profit organization, and so the fees come from that source.
Through the chair, is it anticipated that any workers that are currently county employees will then be employed by this corporation instead of through the county?
Through the chair, it is not anticipated that there would be really any employees of this organization.
Any other?
Through the chair, then, what's really the purpose then? I guess I understand the integration or coordination of efforts, but why do we need to establish this not-for-profit in order to do this work? I mean, how's it being done now in absence of the not-for-profit?
Through the chair, the way it's being done now is through agreement of the counties and the New York State Office of Mental Health. Coordinated Care Services administers the project management. They will continue to do so under the new arrangement. It just gives us a formal identity as the 7 counties comprising New York Care Coordination, so we could accept grants under that name, for example, versus under Coordinated Care Services name, or so it just gives us more leverage to be recognized at the state level as a coordinated group to hopefully influence policy and change.
And through the chair, the referral references or expects to reduce costs. What's your projection in terms of reduction of costs for this program delivery?
Through the chair, we have no exact dollar amount for the projection. We are looking at this part of the project with reducing the physical health care costs for persons with serious mental illness. It's hard for us at this stage because we don't control the physical health care costs, and that's another part of why we want to be able to work with the State Department of Health as well as Department of Mental Health to get a better handle on how behavioral health and physical health come together, because right now they're separate silos. You know, the insurers that provide physical health care don't necessarily know the mental health services, and the mental health providers don't necessarily know the physical health services. So we believe by coming together, that's the best way that we could capture new savings.
Thank you. And through the chair, if this is authorized through the legislature, are we ceding any sort of oversight that we have now or responsibility that we have now in terms of receiving grants? Are they going to go directly to you, or will they still come through us, or is any of our role going to be diminished as a result of creating
Through
this
the chair,
organization?
thank you, that's a good question. Through the chair, each county will be, we are now on the steering committee for this informal group. Each county has a seat at the table, as well as consumers across our 6-county region and providers. We will not change that. Any particular county can leave the organization if we feel it's detrimental to our own county constituents.
Okay, and then specifically about the county legislature, though, currently, you know, we receive so many authorize the receipt of so many grants and pass them on. Is that process going to change at all, or is there anything now that will go directly to this not-for-profit instead of coming through us?
Through the chair, right now we do get money for the 6-county consortium that comes through actually our state aid letter and then goes to Coordinated Care Services. Probably it will still do the same. I don't know that there's any advantage in moving that around any other place, and that corporation will really not have a fiscal person of its own, so it will still follow the same procedure.
Okay, and then lastly, it indicates that the funding for this is contained in the current budget. Can you tell me what that funding amount is?
The state has in its budget $750,000 for new demonstrations, and they have earmarked for our consortium and one for New York City.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, sorry, just a couple other questions. Then, is there no cost to the county directly? If I may be reading this incorrectly, it looks like it's included in the 2010 budget of Department of Human Services, but is that entirely funded by the state? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the cost for running the consortium is paid for by the state.
Okay. Well, thank you, Doctor, for answering the questions, and I appreciate the information. It sounds like an interesting initiative, so I wish you all the best, and would just request, if possible, if you're able to attend tomorrow night's meeting as well, in case we have any further questions regarding this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
No other discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Legislator Kaley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the administration, I heard, the question is, you have, 7 counties, and if it was a detriment to the consortium, a county might be asked to leave. I'm not sure that I heard you correctly. I'm not sure if that's what you meant.
No, through the chair. What I meant is if I felt that the group was going in a direction that would not be favorable to Monroe County and the people that we serve, we can opt out, for example. So I'm not ceding to that group my authority. Mm-hmm. I still have to approve that it's going to work for Monroe County. Our history over the past 9 years is that we negotiate and we talk it through and we make it work for all the counties involved. I'm hoping that formalizing our agreement doesn't make that more difficult, but we've been able to do that on an informal basis.
Thank you. I would hope that that would be the case. Will it ever be the case that another county might ask to join, and would that be a possibility? Do you feel that that's ever happening?
Through the chair, actually that has happened. Westchester has just joined our group, which is another reason we want to make it more formal and put our understanding in writing. I have had inquiries from other counties as well.
Thank you.
No other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 10-162.
Moved by legislator Daniele, second by legislator Rocco. Any discussion? Legislator Anders. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you to the administration, could you give a few examples where the county has taken the lead through this intermunicipal agreement in terms of assisting other counties with any public health emergencies that we've experienced over the past 5 years of the current arrangement?
Through you, Madam Chair, actually, we never have actually utilized the agreement over the last 5 years. But in the event, for instance, if there was a big communicable disease outbreak in another county and the county requested that we send a team of our public health nurses, then the county executive would be able to send the team from Monroe County to the other county, and that we have no mechanism by which we can do that legally now. Another example might be if there was a big environmental problem, flooding, for instance, or hazards from ice storms, and a county requested the support of our staff from our environmental health division to document that drinking water is safe and that other kinds of facilities are habitable. Those are the kinds of things that we had envisioned when we put this mutual aid agreement together.
Thank you very much. I guess it's obviously a good thing that we haven't had to use it over the past 5 years, but it sounds like a good initiative. Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 10-163.
Moved by legislator Quattro, second by legislator Daniele. Any discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 10-164.
Moved by legislator Daniele, second by legislator Rocco. Any discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. No. Any nays? Motion carries. Before I go to the next referral, at this time I'd just like to give, I think Dr. Doniger would like to give a brief, because I know he will be brief, update on the childhood lead poisoning from the Public Health Department. Dr. Doniger, thank you.
In addition, we just have completed the compilation of the number of children that were lead poisoned in Monroe County in 2009, and it continues to show the downward trend. Okay, if I could call your attention to the sheet that looks like this, very briefly. This is a sheet that sort of gives you the 30-year history of what has happened with lead poisoning, childhood lead poisoning in this country. You can see that back in the 1970s, before lead was removed from paint, that levels of lead in blood of children were quite high, and they came down after lead was removed from the paint. And then you see there's sort of another point where things seems to change. That is around the time that lead was eliminated from gasoline. So you can see we've gotten down now in the year 2004 to 1.2%. So if you turn over on the other page, before looking at that, I want you to see if you remember that in the year 2000, a number of different federal agencies sort of challenged the public health community to eliminate childhood lead poisoning by the year 2010. And I was a public health worker in the year 2000, and I was kind of shocked by that because I didn't think we could do it. But if you look at this line here, it says the percent of elevated blood lead levels by year. It sort of looks like in the next couple of years the line crosses down below zero. Do you see that? So I'm quite surprised. I think that when you get to the end, sometimes it's harder and harder to get the very last one. But it turns out, I guess, that the challenge from the CDC and from HUD and EPA to eliminate lead poisoning in this country in 10 years was really a very realistic challenge. So this other sheet, and I don't know if you have it in color or not, do you? This is the data about the number of children that are screened for lead poisoning. Those are the blue bars in Monroe County. And then the red bars represent the number of children that have levels above 10 micrograms per deciliter, which is the new cutoff. We used to think that 20 micrograms per deciliter was safe, but now we've moved the level down, in fact, making it harder and harder for us to get to zero. But as you can see, if you go back to the year 1997, over 2,200 children were lead poisoned in Monroe County, and we've had a marching down of the numbers to a mere 283 in 2009. I suppose 283 is still a huge number, but we're continuing to make progress on it, and we're hopeful that we're going to continue to make progress. The county health department has been involved in lead poisoning prevention for about 30 years, and for the first 20 years of those 30, we were really involved in what's called secondary prevention. That is, we would get reports of children that had been poisoned, and we would go to those homes and we would ask the owners or the landlords to clean them up. And then we would go to the next home where a child had been lead poisoned. And it was fairly obvious that this was not perhaps an ethical or a very smart strategic approach. We should be looking to find the houses where the lead hazards were and get to them before the child was poisoned. It was very difficult to do that. Most landlords, particularly in low-income properties, and the tenants themselves were not that eager to have the government prancing around in their home making an inspection. So this concept of primary prevention, really getting to the properties before children were poisoned, was really very, very problematic. So in the year 2004, New York City passed a law, which was not the first in the country, but the first in New York State, that mandated an inspection of every single residential property for lead-based paint on a periodic basis. The city of Rochester followed in 2006, and so in New York and in Rochester, we are the only cities in New York State that really have what is referred to as a primary prevention strategy for lead poisoning. And what we are hoping is that we will be able to demonstrate that this decline that we're seeing across the country in lead poisoning in children will be steeper in our community, in the city of Rochester, than perhaps in comparable cities in upstate New York, cities that have housing stocks and a lifestyle and a climate that is similar to Rochester. There's obviously been a lot of momentum and a lot of work for this to happen. There's been a very strong coalition in the community that has worked tirelessly to get this law passed, to get the inspections to be done, and to get all the remediation work occurring. We get several grants, and you're hearing about at least one of them tonight. One of them I'll just mention is the Healthy Neighborhoods Grant, which is actually a grant where we send staff door to door and knock on doors and try to identify hazards in the home, but lead-based paint is one of them. If for some reason that particular site hasn't been caught in the net of the city inspections, we get a very large grant from HUD every few years. It's a 3-year grant that helps us pay owners of properties to do the remediation of those properties, to remove the lead and make them safe for their families or for their tenants. We get a grant from the New York State Department of Health, and I believe that's this one that we're looking at right now. It's called the Primary Prevention of Childhood Lead Poisoning Pilot Program. We are far ahead of many of the other counties in the state because we have this ordinance in the city of Rochester that really puts primary prevention to work. We support the work of the city inspectors in this primary prevention grant. And we get one other grant, the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Grant. It's another grant from the state that helps us with the case management and health education and inspections of the properties that come to us. I would say that our annual operating budget for our work related to lead is about $2 million. Is that short enough?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Doniger. I know that County Executive Brooks, the administration, and thanks you to the Public Health Department for all you do. I know especially we are all concerned about this. It's a wonderful issue.
It's pretty exciting to see those numbers coming
Getting
down.
it down.
There's a lot of things I work on where they change by about 10% over, a career. But to see these numbers come down from the thousands to the hundreds is really pretty remarkable.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the referral.
Referral 10-165.
Moved by legislator Quattro, second by legislator, question. Moved by legislator Quattro, second by Daniele. Legislator Andrews.
At this point, I wonder if I could just ask a question of Dr. Doniger regarding his presentation, but it's also related to this referral. You spoke about the City of Rochester and the ordinance it passed in 2006 and the concentrated efforts in the city where I know the highest concern is for lead poisoning. But I was wondering if there are any areas outside of the city also that have that we've focused in on or that also have concentrated high levels of concern for us.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, some of the older villages do have an older housing stock and may have lots of properties that have lead-based paint in them. I don't know if you call it the trick, the problem that causes lead poisoning is an older housing stock and also a house that is allowed to fall into disrepair. So if you have an older home that is maintained in very, very good condition without any peeling paint, it may not be hazardous. However, every year we do find that we do get some children that are lead poisoned that come from the older villages in our community.
Okay, thank you.
Legislator Cayley.
Just briefly through you, Madam Chair, I would like to just applaud the work that's been done here. My district is a city district. I realize that when the city took the initiative to look at the housing stock within the city and lower the incidence of lead poisoning, that I had many neighbors that were landlords, homeowners as well, and it created a great deal of angst. It has not been without some cost to people, but the benefits well outweigh what the costs have been and truly do serve my district greatly, and I really do appreciate this. Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 10-165.
Moved by legislator Rocco, second by legislator Daniele. Any discussion? Legislator Andrews.
I believe we're on 166, is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my question regarding this is, I know it's for the distribution of vaccines, and I imagine this funding doesn't allow us to purchase all of the vaccines that we could in a perfect world. So my question is, how is it determined which hospitals, birthing centers, outreach clinics, et cetera, will receive vaccines? Just generally, is there any sort of prioritizing that happens, and if so, what is it?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have all the details on that, and I can try to look into it a little bit more. We do know that there are certain sites in our community where there are patients seen that are uninsured and typically don't have good coverage for immunizations. And so I would imagine that those are the places where we would be distributing those vaccines.
And through the chair, if it is possible just to get any sort of follow-up on that more specifically, that would be great. I understand it may be difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 10-167.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, second by Legislator Daniele. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Next item.
Referral 10-168.
Moved by Legislator Daniele, second by Legislator Rocco. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. No opposed. Motion carries.
Referral 10-169.
Moved by Legislator Rocco, second by Legislator Daniele. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. No opposed. Motion carries. Is there any other?
There's another amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more.
Referral 10-170.
Moved by Legislator Quattro, second by Legislator Daniele. Any discussion? Legislator Andrews. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. I'm looking here at the sort of the supporting documentation here for this referral for the money for the homeless youth project for Hillside. And it looks like the numbers that are projected to be served are decreasing in the future, although the grant amount appears to increase. And I wondered if someone could speak to the number of children that are served by this referral as well as the cost per child.
Yes, thank you. I'm Bob Zink. I'm the director of the Rochester Monroe County Youth Bureau. And through you, Madam Chairman, number one, the 100 youth that are actually served through this grant, those are projected numbers, and those are set forth by HUD. We've always exceeded those numbers, and within the last couple of years, those numbers have been in the 108, 110 range. So we've always exceeded the expectations set forth by the federal government. The other part of your question was what?
Through the chair, the cost per child served in this program.
Oh, okay. Let me back up. This isn't really an increasing cost because we've gone from a 2-year program to a 3-year program. So the cost per year of $109,000 is stable. I'd have to actually do the math if we divided, say, 110 youth into the 109,000. That would give you the number, but I'm not a calculating mind, so.
I'm not either off the top of my head. Is that $10,000 a child then?
Yes, that approximately is what it would be.
And the outcomes that you're seeing for each of those children can you just summarize briefly what?
The outcomes, and through you, Madam Chair, the outcomes that we're seeing is that approximately 75% of the youth that do go through these programs do go on to, that there are several standards, whether it be education, formalized housing, job, things like that. We do see 75% of them that do go through this program have a positive impact. It has a positive impact on their lives.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And do you by chance track them long-term, or is this just a short-term outcome?
No, this grant has actually been going on since 1998. So this is, I believe, the 6th renewal through HUD. I could actually try to get some statistics to give you an idea long-term, but I think that it's been fairly consistent. Actually, I think, now that I think about it, the 75% is actually the goal that HUD wishes us to have, and I think we're closer to the 80% range as far as our success rate through that program. So,
Okay, thank you
but
very
but I
much.
will get you that information.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any other matters of business before this committee tonight? Legislator Andrews.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had requested that Commissioner Reed give us a brief update about Nurse-Family Partnership. I noticed if you're still here, if you're willing to do that now, that'd be great. If you'd prefer to do it next month, I'm fine with that as well. It's your call.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Reed. I'm the Commissioner of Human Services, and through you, Madam Chair, I would recommend that we do the update next month. We do have a referral that's coming through that's specific to Nurse-Family Partnership for next month, and I think we'd be able to give you some additional information about the program at that time that might be more rich in terms of what we can share.
Thank you. Is that okay? Thank you. Thank you so much. So, being no further business, the May 25th meeting of the Human Services is adjourned. The next meeting of Human Service Committee will be on June 28th, 2010 at 6 p.m.